Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it another couple of minutes just to make sure that everyone who wants to join has joined. So just wait out for another couple of minutes and I'll start the presentation then. Cool. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I'm going to open up my camera so you can all see me. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Nick Waters. I'm one of the senior investigators for Bellingcat. So I've been working for Bellingcat since about 2016, writing for Bellingcat since about 2016, and I've been working for them full time since the summer of 2018, which is pretty cool. So today I'm going to take you over a presentation that examines one of the investigations I did into an attack in the city of Hodeida on the 2nd of August 2018. And it's quite an interesting attack for a number of reasons, which I'll go through. But firstly, just to show you what I was seeing at the time. So what we saw was news articles like this popping up and social media posts on Twitter or on Facebook, that kind of stuff. And when these kind of events happen, you'll always see a big spike in the number of social media posts. It propagates out across the networks of people who follow this kind of events. So yeah, it becomes pretty obvious something has happened. So as you can see in this case, we can see Middle's eye saying 60 dead after airstrike hits hospital and market in Hodeida. Now, the fact that they said airstrike is quite important. So in Yemen, you have the Sadr coalition who are fighting the Houthis, which is like the Houthi government, which is a very massive simplification of what it actually is. There's lots of other stuff happening, but that's a simplification of it. And the Sadr coalition is the only one who has a conventional air force. Although the Houthis do have a quite significant, albeit simple, drone capability, because Sadr coalition are the only one who have fighter jets and so on. They're the only really the ones who can carry out proper traditional airstrikes. So if there's an airstrike in Yemen, the chances are, related to this conflict, the chances are it's almost certainly going to be as a result of the Saudi-led coalition. So just to give you an idea of what we're seeing on social media at the time, I'm going to just go onto Twitter and just conduct a search. So you can do this quite easily. So if you can see, I'm looking for mentions of Hodeida in a certain time range. And this will capture posts about Hodeida from the 1st of August 2018 to the 3rd of August 2018. So I'm just going to tell Twitter to search for that. And as you can see, we've got lots and lots of posts. And this is the kind of stuff that I was seeing on my newsfeed. Lots of claims that an airstrike killed lots of people in Yemen and in Hodeida, and struck a hospital as well. So yeah, as you can see, lots and lots of posts about that. The problem was that when we started looking at this wasn't really the whole story. As we started to go through the media and started to verify everything, we realized that actually the situation was rather more complex than that. So one of the first things we'll do with this kind of incident is to look through the media, the images, the videos, and try and work out, or try and verify what has happened. So in this case, this is a still from a TV station called Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera is Houthi government aligned. However, they tend to produce footage which does show that location at that time and date. So kind of like Rupley. I would trust Rupley footage to be what they say it is. So, you know, this is from the city of X on the date of Y. Same with Al Jazeera. I might not trust the claims they make, but the footage usually is accurate in terms of where and when it is. So in this case, we can see that there is a large body of water. We have some boats, and we have a what looks to be like some kind of breakwater or something in the background. You can see it's kind of textured, as it's not smooth. So you also have what appears to be some kind of concrete edge with a bollard, which, you know, you'd expect to see when people tie up boats. So what we can do is go to Hodeida, and this is Hodeida on Google Earth. And when you look at it, it's a big port city. And the main kind of industrial port is to the north up here. You can see all kinds of industrial activity. But you can't see anything that fits the image we're just looking at around this area. To do that, you need to go slightly further south and look at this area around here. So this is the fishing port of Hodeida. And when you look at it, especially when you look at it from the kind of perspective that the camera is looking at, you will see that we seem to have a match in terms of what we're looking at. So we've got what appears to be a breakwater in the background, a large body of water, and we know it's looking west because the attack happened in the evening. You can see where the sun is, and you can see the concrete edge there. And also on the right-hand side, you can see what appears to be the entrance to the harbour as well, where one breakwater crossed over another. And if we look at Hodeida and the fishing port, we see exactly those features. So we can see the concrete line here. We can see a breakwater in the background, and we can see an entrance, which would be to the right-hand side, if you're looking at it from the perspective of a photographer. So, there we go. And that's roughly the perspective that the camera was viewing when it filmed these scenes. We look at another image from this kind of coverage. This is from Al Jazeera. And it's a little bit more difficult. It's quite blurry, it's difficult to see. This is the kind of media we frequently have to deal with. A lot of the time people assume we can find like the HD footage, but actually a lot of the time we're dealing with pretty low quality stuff. And in this case, we're again looking for features that we can match on the map. So starting from right to left, we can just about see a kind of pale white object, which appears to be on stilts on the right-hand side. We also have two quite distinctive sticky-outy objects here, which if you've done all the work in this kind of area, they may be minarets. And on the left-hand side, we have what appear to be some kind of warehouses, like large buildings, like sloped-in roof. You know, the wall doesn't go all the way up to the roof, so probably a warehouse or storage of some kind. So if we look around the port in Hodeida, we start to see these features, and we can match the features to the map. So, as you can see on the right here is an object, like which appears to be some kind of tower with a large square white thing on top. Very similar to what we're seeing here. Slightly further to the east, we can see what appear to be two minarets as well, quite distinctive. Okay, so that means that if I put myself in the position of the camera, There we go. I can see that I've got the tall object on the right, the two minarets in front, and then that means the warehouse must be on the left-hand side. And here we do have some pretty obvious candidates down here. And so if you fit it all together, looking at the white object, the minarets, and then the warehouse, we can roughly see where we are, especially if we include this smaller building on the right-hand side as well. So if we look at the map again, we've got the tall building, the two minarets, the warehouse, and then if we look very closely, we can see a squarish building on the right-hand side that does appear to have a window which fits the image we can see here, as you can see. So we can say with quite high level of confidence that this image was taken from about here, and that's the viewpoint of the camera. So far we've got two images, and they're both located in the fishing port of Hodeida. Okay, that's cool. But we saw lots of reports saying that a hospital had been hit. Okay, so let's have a look and see where the hospitals are in Hodeida. So really simple search. If you just go to Google Maps, type in hospitals in Hodeida, and you'll start to see all the hospitals that are around Hodeida. Now, if we look at the hospital nearest the fish market or the fish port, we see the Al-Thara Hospital. So considering that seems to be where a lot of these images were taken, it seems to be a good idea to check that particular area for other images or videos and try and match features within that area near the hospital. So, yeah, so we know the casualties around there. So let's check over in this area as well. So in this image, again, we see some of the destruction that was caused by this alleged strike. We see some of the damaged vehicles. We can see some slight structural damage as well. And what's interesting again here is that we have another tall structure to the right-hand side, as well as a large road with a central division. And you can find these features again near the hospital. So if we go to where the hospital is supposed to be, or where Google has told us where the hospital is supposed to be, down here, we can see the features that we're looking at in that image. We can see a tall structure to the right-hand side, up here, and we can see a large, wide street, which does appear to have a central division, albeit it seems to be obscured in the centre here, but it does appear to have a central division. So it seems like we've got a pretty good match at this location as well. So it seems like some of this footage was, in fact, also taken by the hospital. There we go. Okay, so we have a video, we have several videos, images, which appear to show casualties at a fishing port and by a fish market, and also destruction and also casualties as well outside the hospital. I haven't shown the entire or all of the videos because one, it would take too long, and two, they're extremely graphic and I don't want to traumatize you. Save that for myself. Now we start to look at the detail of, was it an airstrike? And it immediately became apparent that there were indications it wasn't. So the most clear indication of that were images like this. Now, when you look at craters, obviously different kinds of explosives cause different kinds of craters. So for example, a 1,000-pound bomb creates a slightly different crater to a 2,000-pound bomb, which creates a slightly different crater to a 500-pound bomb, which creates a different crater to an 81mm mortar, etc., etc. And what we're looking at here does not appear to be the kind of crater that would be caused by the kind of 500-pound, 1,000-pound bombs that are mostly being dropped by the Satellite Coalition in Yemen. And it became obvious what it, or more obvious what it was, when we looked at these craters in detail. And what you're looking at is the crater, or rather the fragmentation marks that's impacted onto the tarmac. And you can quite clearly see the tail fins of some kind of munition in the ground. Now, if you're from the military, you've had any kind of contact with mortars, it's pretty clear that these are mortar bombs of some kind. They are consistent with the kind of damage you'd expect a mortar bomb to do, and also that is quite clearly a mortar bomb tail fin as well. And you'll see why in a little bit. But there's something interesting you can actually tell from this kind of crater. You can actually work out where, roughly, the direction of where the mortar came from. It's actually a quite predictable thing that you can work out. So we actually conducted a really detailed investigation into the use of rocket artillery in Ukraine using this methodology. And what we did is we worked out where the craters were, which way they indicated the launch site was, and then traced it back until we found the launch sites. And we found a lot of them were actually inside Russia, launching into Ukraine. And we did that on a much smaller scale here, just with an individual crater. And doing this is actually less complex than you'd think. So what you can do is you can use this methodology, and you can find this actually pretty easily. You'll find like a lot of military manuals online. It's not too difficult to find. So for example, if I go to here, you know, I can find the tactics, techniques and procedures, TTPs, for field artillery target acquisition. And in this incredibly long document, I can find instructions about how to work out which way a mortar or which way a piece of artillery is, just by looking at the shape of the crater. It's down here somewhere. Maybe I'll just use a search function because this ain't working. No, 97, not going to do that. Either way, it's in here. I can send the links to people if they're interested. So this is how you do it. You have the impact caused by the mortar, and when you think about this, you have the mortar bomb coming in at an angle. So when it explodes, the fragments from the mortar bomb will explode mostly laterally away from the axis down which the mortar bomb has come down. So it will mark one side of the ground more than the other side of the ground. And the ground which is marked more is roughly points in the direction from which the mortar bomb travelled. And the methodology for working out the direction is you look at this kind of pyramid that it forms, or triangle that it forms, and you can roughly work out which way the mortar is. And the reason this is important is because, you know, if this points towards Houthi lines, then, you know, maybe the Houthis launched these mortar bombs. So let's apply this technique to the crater that we've seen. And you can just about see the stem of the mortar bomb just there. And so I can draw the rough triangle, and that points in the direction of which the mortar bomb came from. Now, although I was in the military, I didn't use this technique personally, so I double-checked this with the crater expert as well, an expert as well, and he agreed with the findings. But in this case, because we've geolocated where this image was, we know that that arrow points to the south. And that's quite relevant because we know at this point in time, the Saudi-led coalition was advancing on Hodeida from the south. And we know that because of traditional reporting techniques, or just traditional media reports. So, you know, you have journalists who are on the ground saying, you know, this Saudi-led coalition advance has ground to a halt. But it's not only traditional reporting, we also have more social media-based reporting. So there's a good app using called Live Map, and these guys are pretty awesome at what they do. So what they do, they use social media to track events that have been happening around the world. So I'm going to go and look at Yemen. No. There we go. Okay, so what they do is they look at social media reports and then they verify them, and then they can draw areas of control. So this is Hodeida roughly around the present day. Blue is Saudi-led coalition, red is the Houthis. And they'll update this. Now, the thing is, if I went out on the ground, I wouldn't trust my life to this. But what it does do is give you a rough indication of where the front lines actually are. So we can go to 2018, August the 2nd, to see where the front lines roughly were. And here we go. So we know that the hospital, actually, let's say the fish port is around there. So got a ruler from the fish port to roughly to Satellite Coalition lines. Let's go a little bit further. And we can see that's 8 kilometers to the south. So we can tell that the Satellite Coalition absolutely were within mortar range in order to launch these mortars at the time. That doesn't necessarily discount that these mortars were launched by the Houthis, though. But it does indicate, you know, it's pointing towards the south, or the direction of origin was from the south, which does literally point towards the Satellite Coalition. There is a further piece of information as well, and that's the actual kind of ammunition used. So someone actually went and dug up the mortar stem that was used. And as you can see, you've got the fins, and then you've got the explosive head on top, which is clearly, in this case, exploded. If you ever see this, I would strongly encourage you not to pull out a piece of munitions from the ground unless you know what you're doing. That has a tendency to get people killed or maimed. But this particular mortar bomb was quite interesting to us. So you can see it in a variety of different images and videos, and I'll point out things which were quite interesting. So it seemed to be quite a unique munition. So firstly, just how mortars work. When you drop a mortar bomb down the barrel of a mortar, there's a firing pin at the bottom of the mortar, and the munition comes down, hits the firing pin. And what that does is it sets off a small charge in the stem of the mortar bomb, which is just here. And that sets off an explosion with hot gases come out of these vent holes here. And you can increase the range of the mortar bomb by adding extra charges onto the mortar stem. And you'll see what I mean later on. But what's interesting for me is that these vents are quite unique configuration. So we've got a set of 4 and then a set of 5. And that's quite strange. That's not kind of a standard mortar that you'd see. Or you don't see that in a lot of mortars. You also have a particular shape of fin as well. So rather than being like a smooth curve, you have a kind of angular fin that you can see. And also because of the way the guy's holding it, I can see the size. And just because I've seen mortar bombs, that's definitely not an 81mm mortar or 82mm mortar or either. That is almost certainly 120mm mortar. So it's quite a large mortar. So what we wanted to do is try and work out, you know, who's using this kind of mortar. It seems to be kind of unusual. And so we started trying to match it to the different mortar bombs that you found in these kind of conflict areas. And there are 2 main families. You've got Soviet bloc munitions and you've got NATO munitions, and they look quite different. So this is a 120mm Soviet bloc mortar. As you can see, the base is quite distinctive. You have vent holes in a series of 3, 3, 3 all around the base, all around the stem. And you also have the fins, which are quite rounded at the bottom. This is very, very different from the mortar bomb we can see on the left. So it's definitely not this one. So another few examples. Again, you don't really get the same kind of vent holes that you can see. And we started trying to look through not only Soviet bloc, but also NATO munitions as well, to try and match what we could see. So just to give you an example of what we can kind of see with this kind of stuff. So usually what I would do is just do a quick search on Google Images and start looking through the different kind of mortars I see. And I kind of gave the game away that. And we actually found that the mortar bombs by Rheinmetall seem to fit. So you can see the fins there are kind of the slightly angular shape, which was for us quite interesting. So you can see the angular shape there seemed to match the fin that we could see that had landed in Hodeida. However, you can't see the vents, which is really frustrating because they're obscured by the augmentation charge, which I was talking about earlier. So you can't see the vents here, which is really frustrating. So I need to find better images of Rheinmetall high explosive 120-meter mortars. Now, how do you find this kind of stuff, or how do you find those kind of pictures? Well, what you do is, if you are an arms manufacturer, you want to show off your wares, yeah? You want to show, I've got the best ammunition available. Like, look at my 120-meter mortars. They're better than your 120-meter mortars. And if you want to do that, you can also use those same tools to attract people who are interested in joining your company. So if you go to the Rheinmetall Munition Academy, there we go, you can go to their photos and you can see them at career fairs with their munitions, like 40mm grenades, 120mm mortar, like a loom mortar, white phosphorus, high explosive. And you can go through and have a look at these pictures, and you get much better images of mortars than if you just look at Google image searches. So if we go down, we can see munitions that appear to match the ones that we're looking for. Where's it gone? Here we go. So I saw a couple of these. So it's very difficult to see. I don't know if you can see on the webcast, because it's quite low quality. But you can just about see, poking around the corner of this white munition here, you can see a 120mm mortar, 120mm mortar, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, and then possibly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes, but it's really difficult to say. It's really difficult to see. So instead, because I didn't get a perfect match using this Facebook page, what I instead did was look for students in South Africa who had been to one of the Rheinmetall Denal career fairs, because I figured, if you're like a 17, 18-year-old kid, you want to pose with, things that go boom. So probably pictures about it. And we didn't actually find better pictures. And this was unfortunately back when graph search existed, so it's much easier to do this kind of stuff. And we found these images on the right-hand side. So on the left, you can see pictures from the Rheinmetall Denal Facebook page. You can see we do have a mortar bomb, which does seem to fit. You've got the quite distinctive curved fin. You've got what appear to be the right number of holes. And on this kid's Facebook page, we found again munition very clearly showing the right number of holes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this does appear to be a fin from a 120mm Rheinmetall Denal mortar bomb, which is quite interesting when you consider that Rheinmetall has actually provided 120mm mortars to Satellite Coalition, as well as other ammunition as well. So just to kind of wrap it up and summarize what we've looked at, the 2nd of August 2018 attack on Hodeida was almost certainly a mortar strike, not an airstrike. There is no evidence to show it was actually an airstrike, which brings in a little bit of questions, who could have actually carried this out. However, the direction of origin of the attack, of the mortars that fired or were fired into these locations, was from the south, which is where the Satellite Coalition were. And the munition fragments that were found do appear to share characteristics of those manufactured by Rheinmetall Denal Munition, which has supplied ammunition to the Satellite Coalition. And they have specifically supplied 120mm mortars to the UAE, who were very active in their advance on Hodeida at around this time. So although at first it appeared to be an airstrike on a hospital, it then appeared to be a mortar strike on a hospital, which could have been done by either side. However, the direction in which the mortar bombs came from and the kind of munitions used do strongly indicate that this attack was in fact carried out by the Satellite Coalition. So that's just a walkthrough of the investigation. Be very happy to take any questions whatsoever via the chat as soon as I can work out how it works. Cool. Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions, please whack them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't send it to me privately because I won't see them. I'll start working from questions that have already been asked, and if you want to whack one in during that, please go ahead. Okay, so Bilok asked, what map software are you using? So primarily I use Google Maps, Google Earth, sometimes Wikimapia. Yeah, those three are the main kind of mapping software I use. Google Earth Pro, which you can download, is by far the easiest one to use, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. However, it's not quite as easy as going onto Google Maps on your browser and just typing in what you're trying to find. So I use a combination of all three because all three are good at different things. Okay, so I'm going to put the link to that manual in the chat, so if you guys are interested, you can find it. There you go. Cool. Yeah, if anyone's got any other questions, feel free to go ahead and I'll try and answer them. Give it a couple of minutes. If no one's got anything, I'll pop off. Cool. So, no questions, it seems. Clearly, in that case, my presentation was incredibly dull. Okay, there we go. So, if you're unable to find the mortar from images, what would your next step have been? So that would stretch the limits of open source. In order to find those images of those mortar bombs, I had to look through a lot of PDFs, a lot of Google image searches to try and find them. I think it took me about like 3-4 days or something to find what I was looking for. Now I would ask a couple of people who I know who are munition experts, but even they don't know everything. I would have kept searching until I could identify it, and if I couldn't identify it, I would have turned to crowdsourcing, posted on Twitter and said, can anyone recognize, or does anyone recognize this munition? Yeah. Cool. So how do you normally decide on your investigation targets? So now it's slightly different to back then. So back in 2018, we didn't really have, we had a little bit of funding, so a couple of people were fully employed, but most of us just took on subjects that they found interesting and they thought mattered. So basically, everyone who was an investigator from kind of 2018 back was writing articles for free, or almost everyone was writing articles for free, and they were doing things that interested them, because if you're not getting paid, you can't really be told what to do. Now that we've actually got jobs doing this, which is pretty good, it's dictated not only by what we're interested in and what we think is worthy, but also by projects as well. So for example, last year I did a lot of work on the Yemen project, and so my work was looking at Saudi coalition airstrikes in Yemen. That was my role. That was where the funding came from. That's who was paying my salary. So therefore I had to do that kind of work. So yeah, it's personal interest, but also kind of aligned along projects as well. Are there any key offline sources you regularly use? I don't think so. Since leaving the army in 2015, I beg your pardon. Gosh, it's getting old. I have been extremely online, and so I will primarily use, or almost entirely use, internet-based or digital open sources. So there's no offline source I use regularly anyway. How do you figure out who visited denial career fairs in South Africa? So back when on Facebook you could do graph searches, you could find who was talking about a subject during a certain period of time, or who have visited a particular location. You can't do that anymore, unfortunately, but it was just a case of looking up Rheinmetall during a particular period of time and searching for people who are posting about it. Now the search results are a lot more limited, unfortunately. But yeah, you used to be able to search Facebook very effectively. Did you not deduce how many holes there are by gaff thingies that cover them? By the augmentation charges, unfortunately not. Augmentation charges look pretty similar from mortar bomb to mortar bomb. It's the vent holes underneath that are pretty much unique to that Rheinmetall Denal munition. Thanks for the podcast, or for the kind regards about the podcast. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, unless anyone has any further questions or posted in the next 20 seconds or so, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, and we're actually going to be doing some of our, because obviously the Corona stuff, we're going to be turning a lot of our workshop techniques that we usually teach in person, we're going to be turning them into online video seminars. So keep an eye out on the Bellingcat page, and you'll start to see those kind of, on Twitter or Facebook, you'll start to see those kind of posts about some of the techniques we use as well. Because our workshops have been cut off, which is probably our biggest source of funding, because of the Corona stuff, they will unfortunately you'll have to pay to access them, but just a heads up that they will be there. Cool, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've been your host, Nick Waters. You can follow me at n_Waters89 on Twitter, or just follow Bellingcat on @Bellingcat. Yeah, thank you very much for joining this evening. Bye-bye.